Barefoot Dreams, The Girl from Mabvuku. Dear viewers, today I bring you a story that walks dusty roads and dreams high above clouds. This is the tale of courage stitched with laughter, pain, and hope. Welcome to Barefoot Dreams, The Girl from Mabvuku. Many years ago, in the sun-baked township of Mabvuku, on the eastern edge of Harare, lived a girl named Rutendo Mineta. She had no toys, no shoes, and wore clothes that had seen better centuries. Her underwear was more lace than fabric, and meals, if you could call them that, were a coin toss between porridge or nothing. But what Rutendo did have was a wild, galloping imagination and a heart full of unreasonable dreams. She didn't dream of princesses or castles. She dreamed of books that didn't smell of mildew, of classrooms where windows weren't made of plastic sheets, and of shoes just once, shoes that fit both feet and weren't two different sizes. Her earliest memory wasn't a lullaby. It was the deep growl of her stomach echoing through the night, competing with the rats. She lived in a one-roomed house with cracked cement walls and a corrugated iron roof that clattered like war drums during storms. She shared the space with her mother, two mischievous little brothers, and an uncle who was more of a walking mystery than a guardian. Uncle Bobo, as they called him, claimed to have once danced for Bob Marley. Nobody believed him, but his stories always brought laughter and sometimes, much-needed escape. "Did I tell you how I taught Michael Jackson the moonwalk?" he'd say while stirring porridge with a broken wooden spoon. "You can't even moonwalk to the borehole," Rutendo would shout back, giggling. Rutendo's mother, my Rutendo, was a roadside vegetable vendor. A woman with cracked heels, a booming voice, and the kind of strength that could carry a full sack of tomatoes and two children while negotiating prices. Each morning before sunrise, she would shake Rutendo gently. "Wake up, Mwanangu. Dreams don't cook breakfast. Unless you're dreaming about Sadza." Despite their poverty, school was sacred. Rutendo walked barefoot to the primary school every day. Her feet grew tougher than tires, gravel, glass, thorns, nothing fazed her. She once stepped on a rusty nail and said, "At least now my foot has a story." Sometimes, she'd pretend she was a detective solving crimes in the streets. Who stole the neighbor's mangoes? Why does Mrs. Mandaza always wear lipstick with no teeth? She even made up spy names for herself like Agent Root, on a mission to learn. Humor was her shield. Learning was her sword. Her favorite class was English, and her favorite person in the world was Mrs. Chico, a teacher with a bun so tight it looked like it held all her secrets. "Knowledge is power," she always said. And power, once it's in your mind, can't be taken from you. Not by hunger, not by poverty, not even by ZESA, she'd add when the lights went out during lessons. Rutendo wrote the quote on every page of her notebook like it was scripture. She was curious about everything. She'd ask strange questions. "Miss, why do we say history, not herstory?" Mrs. Chico would smile. "Because her story is what you're about to write." By grade 7, Rutendo was top of her class. Not because she had tutors or a computer, she didn't even have a chair to sit on at home, but because she read like oxygen was found in books. She'd borrow tattered novels from friends, trade storybooks for chores, and once spent 3 days copying an entire science textbook by hand. She studied by candlelight. When the candle melted too low, she'd put a clear plastic bag of water over it to stretch the light, an idea she got from her own homemade, genius experiments. One night, she whispered math formulas while fetching water from the borehole, accidentally solving a word problem aloud. A neighbor looked at her sideways. "Rutendo, are you possessed?" "No," she said, "just obsessed." One day, a teacher caught her writing a poem in the back of her math book. "Rutendo," he said, lifting an eyebrow, "is this a diagram of mitochondria or a poem about loneliness?" Both," she said, grinning sheepishly. He read the poem, cleared his throat, and said, "You've got something rare." Don't ever hide it. That night, she wrote under her thin blanket with a borrowed pen. She wrote of hunger and hope, of walking barefoot and dreaming big. She also wrote about a chicken named Sergeant Drumstick, who kept stealing tomatoes from her mother's stand. That story got passed around school and earned her the title, the funny poet of Mabvuku. In Form 3, Rutundo joined the debate club. Her first speech was on why Zimbabwean youth deserve a future. She trembled. Her voice cracked. Someone in the back whispered, "She sounds like she swallowed gravel." But then she found her rhythm. Her voice rose, and by the end, even the skeptical students were clapping. Her speeches touched on child marriage, environmental injustice, and education for girls. She didn't speak like a student. She spoke like someone who had lived the pages of policy reports. Soon, a local journalist attended one of her debates. The next day, an article appeared in the paper. The girl with fire in her voice, Rutundo Mineta speaks for the voiceless. That article traveled. A week later, a woman named Auntie Mandisa from a local foundation visited the school. She brought Rutundo new textbooks, a poetry journal, and a pair of real, polished leather shoes. Rutundo held them like they were glass slippers. That night, she placed them next to her bed and stared at them like they were magic. Her brothers, naturally, tried them on while she wasn't looking. One tripped over the other. Rutundo passed her O-levels with flying colors. 9 as a distinction in English. Her mother fell to her knees and cried. "God listens to barefoot prayers," she said. Rutundo's headmaster encouraged her to apply for an international scholarship. The application needed an essay. She wrote of Mabvuku's dust, her dreams, the silence of hunger, and the sound of chalk. When she clicked submit, she whispered, "Let this be a beginning." And it was. She got the scholarship. The first time she boarded a plane, she thought the clouds looked like mashed sadza. She arrived in a place where classrooms had central heating, vending machines gave you snacks with no shouting, and snow was an actual thing and not just something white on Christmas cards. It was terrifying and beautiful. She made friends from all over the world, started a campus poetry club, became the first African woman to win her college's writing award. But still, every summer, she returned to Mabvuku. To teach, to mentor, to remember. At 28, Rutundo returned to Zimbabwe permanently. She didn't stay overseas to chase money or fame. She came back with a mission. She launched the Rutundo Rising Initiative, a nonprofit that opened education and empowerment centers for girls in underserved neighborhoods. The first was in Mabvuku. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, a girl named Nyasha approached her. "Miss Rutundo, is it true you walked to school with no shoes?" "Yes, I did. And you were hungry sometimes." "Most times." Nyasha paused. "But now you help girls like me." Rutundo knelt, looked her in the eyes. "Yes, my dear, that's why I came back. So no girl walks alone anymore." One day, Rutundo met Raphael. He was kind, brilliant, and built solar-powered schools in rural areas. He quoted books she loved. He listened when she ranted about water cuts and gender policy. He loved her fire, not just her flame. They married under purple jacaranda trees. The children from her programs read poetry at the wedding. She wore a beaded barefoot sandal, walking proudly with her past. Years later, Rutundo stood at a global education summit in Geneva. She spoke of dusty roads and bold girls, of hunger and humor, of power hidden in plain sight. The audience rose in applause. Back in her hotel room, she opened a letter from her mother. "Kana un rudo nemwoyo wakachena, hapana shinokandakana." If you have love and a pure heart, nothing will fail. Asterisk. Rutundo never stopped dreaming. She published books, trained young leaders, and raised twin daughters who once told their classmates, "Our mom used to walk barefoot. Now she walks on stages." Rutendo became a symbol not of pity but of purpose. Of what happens when a girl dares to dream through gravel and glass. And when she passed away many years later, people across the world lit candles and wrote poems in her honor. Her old leather shoes are now in a museum exhibit titled, "From Mabvuku to the World, The Footsteps of Rutendo." And the note inside reads, "She dreamed, she walked, she rose." The end. Thank you for listening. If Rutendo's journey moved you, please like, share, comment, and most of all, never stop dreaming, no matter how cracked the road may be.